Before we get started, I want to talk about today's sponsor, The House of Fraud. The House of Fraud was started to be the best online community for fraud fighters to learn and grow together. With 7 original series, micro master classes, a huge job board, and obviously networking opportunities, The House of Fraud is a safe place to discuss the problems you're facing today without having a million vendors asking you to please DM me because we can solve this problem for you. The House of Fraud also just launched a brand new public-facing original series called This Week in the House of Fraud, where Brian and I discuss the last week's hottest topics so you know what you're missing out on. If you're tired of being left out, please visit www.thehouseoffraud.com to learn about how to get your very own membership. I'll see you in there. Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Fraud Boxer. I got my sales guy, Ryan McDonald here. What's up, man? How are you doing today?
What's up? Doing good. Excited to be here.
Thanks for coming on the show. Super appreciate that. You know, we just kind of were having a conversation earlier in the week and said, hey, why don't you come on the show? You know, we were talking kind of at MRC, and you were at MRC, but you weren't at MRC for your business. You were there by yourself.
Yeah. So that was quite the jump, the leap of faith, I'd say, going to MRC. I'd never been before. It just
Really?
never made sense for me. Yeah. It never made sense for me to go with the team, a decision above me, but never attended. Still have never technically attended, but I got to go experience the networking community aspect of it this year just by investing my own dollars and a little bit of, some help from a few close friends that are believing in me, in my journey, and just showed up. And I will tell you, that was probably the biggest jaw dropper for people. Was they're like, why are you here? And I was like, I just showed up because I got things to do. A lot of people like that. They're like, oh, that's your own money. It's like, heck yeah. Like, I got to invest in myself. I got to start doing that right now.
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely, especially me and with this business on the podcast and then my day job at iHerb, there are times when I go to conferences that I don't go for iHerb. So I have to pay for those, out of the podcast account, but it's still, technically out of pocket. And it feels different, when it's your own money on the line. But I mean, I do handle my business a little bit differently when I'm there for podcast business versus when I'm there for my day job business. But I mean, that conference too is not like, it's not the cheapest. I mean, there are more expensive ones, but it's just like the ARIA, I feel, is just really getting away with itself on some of the fees and the costs that they have. They might need to rope that in. Like I said on like my recap episode of the MRT, that like the sushi cost, like it's like $35 for a roll at just their little fast thing, which is egregious, $25 for an old fashioned. I understand the type of clientele that they normally get, but if one single drink is 10% of what I'm paying for a room, that's a little bit alarming, just for the record, So.
Oh, trust me, it was my first time at the ARIA. My wife Kira attended the show with me as a support, and it was her first time at ARIA, and we were blown away by some of the costs. She wanted sushi. She wanted all the seafood type foods. So I really got familiarized with the cost structure, and it's amazing. It's amazing. But hey, you know what? We still kept it in budget. That was the biggest
that's good
factor at the end, was we were still within budget.
So did you guys try any of the restaurants that were there? Like in any of the ones inside, besides the stuff that's in like proper food hall? Did you go to like Bardot or Carbone or Din Tai Fung or anything?
Ooh, we went to, there was a pizza place near
Moneyline Pizza.
Moneyline Pizza, and then I'd say Javier's.
Yeah, Javier's is good. Yeah, over in the lobby.
Oh,
I call it Money Shot Pizza because it's funny to me. But
it was. I mean, it was one of those things where we were waiting for our room and we're looking around and we're toting bags and we're thinking, where can we just get something simple? And then the pizza spot was like right there, and it was glowing and beautiful. And
I ate there hungry. At least twice, maybe even 3 times. Like that's my late night spot because they're open a little later. I can never complain about Money Shot Pizza.
No, sir.
It's a New York style pizza for anybody that's listening and curious. Super good. In ARIA, in the lobby, kind of down by the cashier. So, yeah. So tell me a little bit about yourself. Tell me about your fraud industry experience, and then we'll get into what you've been up to lately.
Sure. So like many and everyone has said, and I even, heard this today, just listening to your new show, I fell into it just like everyone else. It was an interest that I didn't think existed. It was a perspective I didn't quite have yet on what, fraud looked like, opportunism, abuse, people, looking for advantages, system hack, if you will. Just never really crossed my mind as much until I started working at People. I was there for about 6 years, and I, scaled the entire sales organization. I went from an SDR type role for marketing, where I was manually updating lead information, looking for LinkedIn's, finding phone numbers, all of that, to where at the end of my tenure, I was a team leader on the customer success team, and I was getting to work with our big clients, big accounts. And so I sort of had a step up, graduated process in my exposure to the fraud space. As I took on bigger accounts with more complex projects, they exposed me to new things. And it happened. I just fell in love. I really, I have a good catalyst that got me there, but it just made sense. It's like, this is where we're headed. I need to be in this space.
Yeah. And then for anybody listening, People, it's spelled PIPL. Most of us OGs call it Pipple. What we do. I'm sorry for anybody from People that's listening. It's just what we've always done. We've always called it Pipple. I've used Pipple at a couple of different companies before, I usually use it in a supplemental capacity. So I would enhance our own data with data from that system, and then write our own internal rules and logic around the data that we were able to glean. A lot of identity-based data, stuff that you get, where people lived, addresses, phone numbers, validating that information. Probably a lot more stuff that I didn't know. That's just what I used it for. And then I would just add the identity resolution piece is really cool. That was one of my favorite parts of their product offering, was the data linkages that they can make and really expand on that why. I always felt like that was such a powerful, very basic reasoning, was being able to say these two things connect, and I can tell you why with a level of certainty. That just always made sense to me. And that was one of the big pieces that I always liked. What's really funny is I do a lot of these recordings, and a lot of different vendors come on this show and talk about what they have. But it's really interesting to see kind of the reemergence, because we've been focusing so long on machine learning and AI. And like, how can we make the decisions for the team instead of having the team make the decisions like we used to, or instead of having rule-based decisions being made where like we set criteria and then basically a binary yes, no is eventually what it comes out to, even if there's the manual review in the middle. But what's coming back is like, Count used to really tout it as their like big thing, was what they're linking. You could link accounts to different things using different variables. And I think almost every provider has some sort of linking something offering now, but it's really becoming forefront again. And it hadn't been in a number of years. It's just like device ID seems to have this big reemergence. It's like, I guess it's like the fraud fashion trends, we'll call it, I guess. We'll put that out there. Is what's old is new again. So the old style is back in fashion, and people are asking for it when they go to the mall now, if you will.
Dude, I have a 15-year-old. She'll be 15 in a couple, 3 days. Through my partner Kira. She had I met her when she was 7, and so I've been around for 7-8 years. So I call her mine.
Yeah, that's really cool. Like, that's great. Yeah.
And so to the fashion thing, it's so funny you bring that up, because I have lived it. I have purchased it for my kiddo. Like they're not official Jean Co jeans, but man, I've got so many bell-bottom carpenter pants in my house. It's crazy.
So I was over in Tampa at the Charge Bash a few weeks ago, and one of my old good buddies used to live down the street from me when I lived in my hometown. He was actually from Michigan. He came out there. Long story, but we met him playing Halo 2, and then he moved out and lived with my old coworker. But he is the GM at a Tilly's out there. So I went and had lunch with him on my way home, before I went headed to the airport, and was looking at all the stuff that they have there. And of course, obviously the big wide leg jeans are back, which I see all the kids at like the neighborhood walking around get it. I didn't get when I was that age,
Right.
and that was popular. I still don't get it. But you know, it is what it is. So it's like the big jeans, the big baggy hoodies. And what I was super surprised at is the JanSport backpacks are back.
Oh yeah.
And that's crazy to me because those were like the backpack, obviously in the late 90s, early 2000s when I was in high school. But then band shirts, but it's like Eazy-E, it's like NWA, Sublime. And the weird thing is like shamelessly the kids are like, I don't listen to this music. I don't know what it is. But
Right.
they're wearing the brand for fashion. And it was just blowing my mind, all these things that he was telling me. But I will say, I did get this really cool Bigfoot, you know, the monster truck, sleeveless cutoff shirt that he had there. I was like, look, I'll take that. It's like the old original Bigfoot, like when it was like the original F-150. So I got that. I haven't worn it yet. After we're done recording, I'm going to go jump in the pool and I'll probably wear it out there this afternoon. So yeah.
As you should. Oh yeah. No, that's it's funny. It's buying that stuff, doing the laundry, seeing that. I'm just like, oh, okay. I don't get it. I don't, but it's cool. It's like, hey, that's how you're expressing yourself. It's in budget. Let's do it.
I saw really weird analysis. Let's just stay on the fashion thing, I guess, for a minute.
Here we go. Let's do it.
I saw weird analysis the other day that it was the differences between like the boomers, Gen X, millennials, and into Gen Z about fashion. And it was like boomer grew up where like everybody kind of like had the same style. Like you had to have the same type of haircut. You had to wear like suits when you would go to work, you know, that sort of like mentality. So everything was kind of the same there. And then Gen X had like, you know, the grunge stuff where it was more, everybody kind of wore the same thing there. But with millennials, they said there was a more emphasis on trying to be cute and neutral with your look. So less logos, more like colors, layers, but more trying to just be what the historical term cutesy would be, with it youthful, cutesy. And for whatever reason, like millennials, that's just how they chose to dress. And Gen Z is more, they're following fashion from TikTok. They're following fashion that they see from the internet because that's just all they've ever known, you know? So with millennials, it was more of like, you could kind of adopt more your own style, but there was an emphasis on being cutesy. And I think maybe for me personally, my interpretation of that is why when I look at photos from like the 70s and 80s of 30-year-olds, they look like they're 50. And when I look at photos of like 45-year-olds now, they look like they were 25, you know?
Right.
I think it just seems like how you carried yourself. I don't know. It's a long way. And it just like, I just said, was an interesting article that I read that like the millennial, which I identify in the millennial group. And I agree. It was, how can you look your best forward facing when Gen Z doesn't care so much about that as they do about being in the trend that's happening.
Right. That's a great way to put it. It's funny what you talk about there. And it, like the transition, I totally know that because I've done that. Like I had some of the logoed stuff, but now I want solid colored stuff, simple layers. Yep. You know, you got to have the plain colored tee plus the flannel plus the jacket that goes over the top. You know, the light colored jeans are back, you know. But they're simple. You want simple, basic. So I've transitioned my closet, you know, in the last few years to something like that, where it's like, it's almost the same thing, like almost every day, but I just prefer that. I like the feel, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I wear like a lot when I'm not wearing golf shirts, which I wear a lot. And I do like to be bright on my golf shirts, but my regular like weekend going out to like having the patio beers is like just a plain t-shirt with jeans and my Vans. And that's been my constant for, you know, 15 maybe even 20 years now, it's just, that's
Right.
just what I've always worn. And I want it to be a little form fitting, kind of grew out of my skinny jean era. But I still want it to like be form fitting enough that it's not all hanging and loose all over
Yeah.
me,
I like that. I like that style. And yeah, totally agree.
So tell me what you've been up to lately.
My daughter, she's applying for work. She's getting into the workforce at 15, and her resume was just so loud, and I was like, oh,
That's Gen
I'm like,
Z
what?
for you, man. That's Gen
I was
Z.
like,
Probably got a
what
TikTok
template
a
is
QR
this?
code to a TikTok video.
Yeah. And I'm like, you need to I'm like, I don't even know where to start on this thing. Like, and I was giving her a hard time. I mean, it's her first time. So, I tried to be a little nice, but I saw the resume and I was just like, wow, anxiety.
Did
so
she
much
like go
going
through
on.
like a school, like did like school teacher had to write it or anything, or did she just take a stab at it on her own?
Yeah, I think her and I think she went through just finding a template that she really liked, probably just in Word or Google Docs or something. But I love the initiative. I love
Yeah,
that
that's
she
what's
cares
excellent.
about that.
That's huge.
She cares
Yeah.
about that part. Yeah. So, yeah, I got cool kids. That's all I can say. They're very independent when it comes to things they want. Like that.
What kind of places are you trying to have her work at? Like, you trying to do food? Are you trying to do like amusement park type stuff?
Food, definitely. It's tough because a lot of places are more, 16, they're rating the bar because that minimum wage, or, for example, McDonald's here in Post Falls is $17 an hour starting off. And so it's 16-year-olds competing with 22-year-olds and 23-year-olds for
and like a
livable
16-year-old
wage.
making $17 an hour. Like that's a decent amount of money for someone who doesn't have any real bills, Like,
heck yeah. Oh my God.
Yeah.
I wish. I remember $10 an hour when I was like in high school. When I was a senior in high school, I thought I was making baller money.
Out of high school, and I was $6.75, but I'm a little older. But $6.75 was the minimum wage in Oregon when I graduated, and I was making that kind of money. I remember when I left Oregon to move to Los Angeles. The time I left Oregon, I was making $14 an hour, and I was a buyer for a chain of retail stores that was several $1 million. So that's responsibility for not a lot of pay. It is what it is at the end of the day. I still did, it came up on the more recent episode that it isn't out yet when we're recording this, but it'll be out on the new What's Happening in the House of Fraud. But I talked about like that theory of act your wage and what that really means for people that are like, okay, pay me more, pay me more, pay me more. And it's like, I go into you have to do the more to get the more pay. You'll get the more pay and then you start doing more. Correct. You have to like demonstrate that you have it. And it's like one of those things where, I guess it's where I differ with, like, I identify and resonate a lot with a lot of the anti-work Reddit crowd, which is like, there's some bad managers out there and the managers out to bad things. I think that it's the manager's job to try and find coverage on those sorts of things, not the employee's job to find coverage and like food service stuff. I think, that's kind of what a manager's supposed to be doing. But also at the same time, like, I don't think people should be promoted without demonstrating that they're capable. And in order to, you got to prove that you can do it. You have to have that hunger. It doesn't just come to you. It doesn't just happen because you're tenured. Sometimes it does. But, people really need to understand that, like, you got to do your best in order to get to the next level. And even at $14 an hour, when I was the buyer making all the decisions for this men's lines at this massive company, I still gave it my 100%, like it was what I was supposed to be doing. And I learned so many valuable skills in that environment that helped me to get to where I am today. And that's where I say, like, where I am now is a fortunate position, but I sacrificed a lot early to be to where I'm at now, to be comfortable now. Missed a lot of funerals, didn't get any sick time. All my friends were going out and having fun doing vacations, and I didn't get any of that. That's why you like people, like I travel a lot now, but like that's something that's a more like the last 5 years thing is where I finally been able to take like a decent amount of vacations here and there. Yeah.
Hey, hard work pays dividends. Hard work pays dividends, and and what you were describing there, I don't know, it made me think of this skill probably. I come from like the blue collar community. I worked at a mine, an underground mine. I worked as a cobbler.
You worked in a mine? You did?
Yes, sir.
What? Go on about that. I need to know more about this.
Yeah, I worked for very briefly, very briefly after high school. I worked for U.S. Silver. There's the Silver Valley where I'm from is known for its mining and logging. Kellogg, Idaho, Wallace, Idaho, that area. And so I was working underground, and I was a young fresh body out of high school who could go underground and smash rocks in what they called a grizzly, and it's where they dump the mined material, the muck, into this grate,
Okay.
and before it goes to the mill, sometimes the big pieces can't get through this grate, so you got to harness up, go over this little grated cliff thing, and you're smashing these big chunks.
With like a sledgehammer?
Sledgehammer, pickaxe, yeah, you name it. So you had to learn like grain structure and things like that, and how to properly hit, and it was always next man up, type of thing. Like what you were saying, like, this guy got hurt or someone goes down, next man up, let's go, kind of thing.
So now I know why they call the theme park Silverwood, because it's the Silver Valley. It's like silver mines over there.
So Silverwood's a little bit further away. That's up in like the Spirit Lake area. I really don't know where that name came from, but the Silver Valley is mainly because the main mine material was silver, galena, copper, or
That far? I mean, I have let's see what
it's about an hour. I'd say it's about an hour and a half. It's about an hour drive. It's but I guess if you counted the whole area, yeah. I mean, the mining and logging is really, really prominent in North Idaho, where I'm from.
I still have a shot glass from Silverwood that I got probably 2005, maybe 2004.
Wow.
That
Wow.
still is in use.
Hey, nice. Yeah, it's changed. The theme park's gotten pretty big since then. It attracts a lot. But yeah, no, that's a whole nother life that I've lived there, doing that stuff.
That's crazy. I had no idea you were like, so do you go down like in the lift?
Yeah,
down into the like under, and you have the little thing on your head and turn it on? And all
Yeah,
that?
you jump in the skip, go down. I think the lowest I ever went was 50. It was either 5,700 or 5,900 feet down.
Like a mile down, more than a mile
Yeah.
underground.
Yeah, and it's all ventilated. It's as safe as it can be. It's pretty amazing what they've done down there. I tell anyone, if you get the chance and you're up for it, check out an underground mine. It's pretty amazing what they've done without all the technology that we have today. Yeah. I know it's crazy. You got used to it. You'd go down when it was dark. You'd come back up when it was dark. I working graveyard shift. Sometimes you didn't know what day of the week you.
I would say like, and I'm not in favor of putting people out of jobs, but like as far as like safety goes, like mining would be one of the first things that I would expect like robots to take over and do. I know there's a lot of people that mine, but I would also say that the Gen Z is probably not coming up as a generation of miners. So that's probably going to be something that like they're going to need to figure out at some point, Wow, but
it's very community driven, that type of work. It's like you're born in that area, and a lot of times you have family, dads, uncles, older brothers that all work at these same mining or logging groups. And Billy's 18, yeah, get him signed. You know what I mean? It's really like that.
Was the pay good?
Oh yeah, it's super hazardous. You're getting hazard pay right out of the gate. I want to say, because I worked there right at 2012. I want to say it was like, gosh, $18 an hour starting off.
Okay, that's pretty good back then, yeah.
Just kind of the entry level. It wasn't too bad. And in that area, before a lot of the prices went up, you could do a lot with $20 an hour in the Silver Valley. Do some damage.
Just looking at this old map over here, because so my father lives in Eastern Washington, so I'm just like seeing how close some of these things are. It's just weird to see it's a different time in my life when I used to spend time over outside of Ritzville and like all these other towns.
I'm close to that. You ever come up there? It's in Ritzville, is 90 minutes from where I am sitting right now.
Like, so Washtuckna, that's where a lot of my, have you heard of that town before?
What is it?
Washtuckna?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
That's where my step siblings are. They're all from there. And then like I see Lind, Washington, right there. Lind, Washington. That's where my father used to live, in Starbuck, which I definitely bet you haven't heard of Starbuck, because there's only about 100 people that live there.
I don't think I've ever been
times.
through Starbucks. However, Ritzville for me, I know Ritzville specifically because that Starbucks that's been there since I've driven through Ritzville to the junction, like for 12 years. I go to the same Starbucks every time, never question.
That's so funny. Yeah, this is just crazy for me. Sorry, everybody. I'm reminiscing over here on a map on my screen. But yeah, tell me more. Tell me more about like how like what else have you noticed on the job search right now? You know, like what else?
Uh, Network's important. That's
Yeah,
kind of my big thing is spending time, investing time and effort building a solid network, and not just people you add to your connection list, but I'm talking connecting with them and having a digital coffee, meeting at a conference, just finding people that get to know the real version of you, and that way they can vouch for you when you're the one of 250.
yeah.
I can't even put into words how thankful I am and fortunate to have the network I do, because I don't think I'd have some of the good opportunities right now that I would at all without it. It is pain. It is pain over.
The this industry, we always talk about how small it is, and it's true. You know, like if we have people that we trust and have those connections, like I had a very large company. They have a job posting coming up. It's not live yet, but they pinged me, very, very, very large company in our industry. And they said, hey, we're looking for someone that we know and we trust right now. You know, like before we post this is who's leaving. This is what the job's going to be. Do you know anybody? And I sent them a couple of candidates. Yeah, but they'll already probably have their idea on a couple of candidates that came in, vouched for, and ready for from people like myself or whoever else they might have asked at the same time. Yeah. I think this industry really is. That's why, like, you see the same people, just at different companies in this space.
Correct.
Like, you don't see a lot of new people come in. I mean, you do now. It's grown significantly. But for the OGs, like all of us that have been in this industry for more than 10 years, like we'll still see each other. We're just at different companies. And we're not like at our second company. We're at our fourth, fifth, sixth different company now, you know? But it's all at the same day. Like usually the conversation comes up as like, hey, good to see you. What's been going on? Which company are you with now? And then you never know, you know, but you know there's somewhere. But yeah.
Yeah. That's so true. And that helps. That helps a ton because, you can ask like, hey, I'm applying for this role at this company. You worked there 3 years ago. Well, what do you work in that role specifically? And things have always changed, but I like that historical context. It helps paint the picture better for where the company might be headed. And so that's the best part is when you have that cross company collaboration for a single person. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and it's cool to see people like jump around to like, especially on the vendor side, like especially if it's somebody you trust, that vets companies really well. Like if they're there, all of a sudden it gives that company like a whole different level of legitimacy than if they hadn't. Now have been some people that like I've talked to, and I'm like, take the money on that because they're about to exit, and let them do that. I'll never hold it against them as long as they keep paying the bar tab at the end of the night. But
you've got to put in the work. And especially when you're on the vendor side, like no one trusts you anyway, right out of the gate. Like they really don't, because you have a job. They know what your job is. You don't have to tell them. They know you have to sell to earn. But if you just come in with like, this, let's not talk about it because it's there. We both know what our goal is. And as long as we can keep it even keeled, it'll be fine, whatever the end result is. And that's what I did with this client we just had raw, tough, hard discussions. And it was like, the limitations of what I can do.
that's good.
You know that I can't do this. You know that I'll go to bat for this and get my ass chewed out. So, and I built the trust that way. I built the trust by saying, I'll go to the chopping block on your behalf because I think it's right. Absolutely. You betcha. That's my job, is to be the voice of the customer. And I think that's forgotten a lot at customer-driven businesses. The customer is driving that. Listen to their voice a little bit.
Yeah. And like you and I had our own offline conversation the other day where I was telling you an example of a vendor of mine coming to my office and then showing me all the cool stuff that they were working on and saying, like, isn't this great? And I was like, no, this isn't great. because this is not at all what I want from the product. Like I didn't buy the
Right.
product for it. I bought the product for it to do. And I think that it's cool that you think it's cool, but I can't think of any customer in their entire portfolio that wants to then do that in order to get that result. And
Right.
it was one of those like where you really do need to have a voice of the customer person somewhere in your company that says, this is how I want to use the product, or this is how I use the product. Whether that's how you designed it or not is irrelevant. This is how it's being used. And if you have somebody identifying that that's how it's being used, especially if it's most of your customers, then you need to really focus your energy on that specific piece. But also asking the questions. Like, I mean, I can always tell you of all the vendors that I use, if they were to come to me today and say, hey, if you change one thing about it, or you could add something to this product, what would it be? And I would be able to tell each and every single one of them, like what I would like from that product. And that's what, like, if you have that level of feedback and that level of data, then you're making a product that suits your base instead of the product that you want. There's nothing wrong with making the product that you want to make. Just make sure that you're spending the right amount of resources to make the right piece of the product for how it's going to be used. But I mean, I told you on that call, like I've used fraud tools in non-fraud capacities several times. One time even I had a vendor, this was very early in my career, straight called me and say, what are you doing? Like, why are you using it like that? And then they actually flew me to their office to meet with their product team to describe and show them like my line of thinking as to why I'm doing it like that. And then they completely changed how they built the software from there on out. I'm not saying I'm responsible for that, but I'm saying like I'm at least one person that told them a different way to use it, that then they had an aha moment themselves and started building that. And a lot of those things are more commonplace today. So,
yeah, I think that's great. And that, a lot of those conversations you're seeing now, it's shifting from like these strategic alliances, if you will, where it's actual like where you're buying my service and I'm giving you enough of that white glove service, where partnerships, technology partnerships, let's augment this, supplement that. It makes sense. It makes sense from like a profitability and a growth standpoint, because the relationships that are so deep with some of these things, you can't get them to budge unless just that product or what they're using with that vendor is just simply at that point, that inflection point where it's like, okay, we've outgrown this relationship from a technological perspective. Time to go look for something else. But if you have that conversation and those engagements with those clients early and often, even when you're signing the contract, if you're not talking about 2 to 3 years ahead, I look at that potentially at times as almost a risk to doing business with that client, because you don't know what 12 months is going to do. You got to look at it from a revenue perspective. I have to backfill that if I lose it. But if we're talking to this client 3 years into the future, they know where my intentions are in working with them. It sets the stage early,
Yeah. And I will say, like, before we jumped on to record this, I was on a call with one of my vendors, and our contract's we're about a little less than 18 months out from renewal. But I was like, guys, it's time to start looking at that date now and start pulling some numbers together, start figuring out where we want to go with that. Especially because we're looking at kind of changing how we did the integration. So I was like, look, maybe we time the contract to be either at the same time, or we time it to where this is now my renewal. So when I sign a new contract now, that then covers over the old contract. And now that's our new renewal for our next 3 years going forward. And then I don't have to have that conversation for 3 years. Because I love not having the renewal conversation.
Right.
Like I will say, like my current company, which is totally fine, and my last company, because they're large companies, they want to have that conversation every year. All right, our business grew, give me a better deal, is like really the underlying what they want from the conversation. But man, to have that conversation every year as the relationship manager at my company sucks. And then like to have to go through and get it through legal and do like the whole thing. Well, man, it's just, that's why I love like 3-year contracts. Yes. And if I could do 5 years, I probably would, because I just don't want to have that. I just want to like status quo and keep it on. But like, especially I heard like we're already a large company and our growth is so spectacular
Nice.
that we have to be having those conversations fairly often, because if I'm doing twice the business that I was 2 years ago, I mean, I can't be paying the same rate, for twice the volume.
Right. And but it's like, you plan for that, and I think as a seller, that's the level of optimism you have to have, whether it's fake or real, is you have to go in to sell this with the idea that it's going to become much more than what you sold it for. You don't sell a $500 a month deal and say, oh man, 3 years from now, it's going to be $500 a month and it's going to be awesome. No, you want that $10,000 a month, because they continue to see the value and they needed more. And the cost of more means that it solidifies my bottom line as the vendor, and you don't have to worry about solving for this until you're ready to have that or something ad hoc comes up. But I find it funny when some sellers or biz dev people don't have that type of conversation. I mean, I imagine many do now, but when it doesn't, it's kind of funny. It's like,
Yep. One of the things that's super successful for me, and then we're going to start to wrap this up here, but one of the things that's like super successful for me is, a lot of the vendors have multiple product offering these days. And I may or may not need multiple of them. I may only need one, I may need two, but don't try to sell me the additional products if I don't need it, but tell me about them. Does that make sense? Like, tell me they exist, because there's been several instances where, and this is where I say like the orchestration platforms are super cool, but there's been several instances where like I may not need like an IDV solution now, but now we're launching a new product that does have that sort of need, and I need to turn that on. Like a great example is, like we didn't have guest checkout before. And so I didn't have a need for any sort of pre-authorization fraud screening, because everybody had to be signed into an account. I got a ton of account level data. Then I get the transactional data and I can make that decision pretty easily. Now we have a guest checkout solution that I need to have a pre-op loaded solution. So it like completely changed the game. So if I wouldn't have known that my vendor had that to begin with, like, I wouldn't have known that I could switch to that. And the same thing for any company that has like any sort of like attempt create monitoring or ATO monitoring. I may not say I need it, but just tell me you got it. And then all of a sudden, if I see like my ATOs go sideways, I could be like, hey, remember you were telling me about that thing? We're already signed. What is it going to take to add that onto the contract now? Do a quick addendum, fire it in, off we go. We're up and running, So, I mean, that's where I just like, don't always try to just sell additional services, everybody. Like, mention them, talk about them, but be there ready to pick up the phone if someone calls and says they need it.
Yeah, know your book of business. That was one of the things with being at People, there were index updates to the information all, quarterly. And so when those came out, the company sent an email out to everybody. But you'd go to your client list, your top 10, you'd start there and you'd just go back through the basics. Like, why are they using us? What was the deficiencies? They didn't want to test this flow because the match rate wasn't good enough, but we improved that. They may not want to do it now. Like you're saying, it may not matter now, but when it matters, you want them calling you, not wondering who to call. You want them to know, oh, I can just call Ryan at XYZ company and he knows this is important, That's a good relationship. And that's where it changes from like, I'm not selling you. I'm not, trying to earn a 12-month, commission. I'm trying to support the growth of your business and just be a consultant. I genuinely care and want to see success on both sides. So it's just changing the approach. Just be proactive, just like in fraud, be proactive where you can. And just like in selling.
Sound like Alexander.
Accounts, hey, that guy knows a thing or two. He knows a thing or two.
Yeah. So, I mean, I really hope that you get what you want out of this search. I know you got a couple of fish on the line there. Just got to cross the finish line for those. So I really hope you do get that. And then, hey, real quick, how's it been working? Because you do work for Fraudboxer too. Selling these sponsorships. So how's that been? Money's dried up a little bit on sponsorships. It's just it's a little tough out there. But I think that's just the economy too. The booming economy. I think the economy's great because I'm doing great. But I know there's a lot of people in the world that aren't doing great, and there's a lot of companies that are struggling too.
Hey, no, first off, should have given you that shout out from the start, but it was great. It's been great. It's been great. Just some of the relationships that I haven't been able to get, I've been getting going a little bit more just from a personal level. But it's been a different type of conversation. It's different. It's a big picture selling, and I'd say the biggest challenge with it, funny enough, has been that there's been like significantly more conferences going on. Like we talked about the other day, I don't think I'm getting dismissed. I think the ghosting is happening.
No, I think they're just busy.
It's like 2 months of back to back. I have some of these people, I'm like, you were in Europe and now you're in Singapore and now you're back in this. It's been a week. What's
super crazy to me is like, the sponsorships take a little while to do most of the time. But I've been fortunate that all the sponsors I've had so far, except for one, have come to me and asked to sponsor, which has been awesome. So, but now we have you here going out to new people and these are people that like I may or may not have already had relationships with, or that you have known, from your existing book of business. But what's so weird to me is I think conferences is a great example. If people spend $30,000, $40,000 on a booth, and I think a big sexy booth is cool. I told Sardine that they had a big sexy booth at MRC, but you get 2, maybe 3 days at a conference, right? And you're spending $30,000, $40,000 on a booth. And you feel really good about the leads that you get from this booth because they're standing there, they're in front of you, and you're like, shit, yeah, I'm going to send them an email afterwards. They're probably going to reply. They're probably going to book a demo, and it's a warm lead. It's what we would call a warm lead, I guess, in sales, right? And then it tails off. They have no problem spending that kind of money for 3 days for a month straight each at different conferences, when you could spend a little bit less on my show and have 4,000 people hear it every 2 weeks repeatedly, again and again and again. Like, I just feel like, and then it's forever too. It's like, I don't change out the ads, whether your ads affixed to this video or this audio, forever. So like anybody in the future that might be Googling it or having the problem that then stumbles across one of these episodes, they're going to hear it. So if they're searching for some sort of issue that's related to what you do, and then you're there, 2 years ago, now they're calling you from something that I just think that like sometimes some of the marketing spend, personally, and I don't work in marketing, but some of the marketing spend is extremely short-sighted for what you would get sponsoring this kind of medium. And I think that like companies like, the Bridge Wallets, BetterHelps, AG1, like these companies are really good at recognizing that these smaller content creators like myself actually go a lot further for brand recognition than setting up a shop inside something that like a mall or a pop-up somewhere that only a few people are ever going to get to. You get a wider audience in a lot more territories through this type of delivery system. That's just like my opinion, man.
It's true. No, it's true. I don't disagree. I've never worked directly in marketing, and so I know there's probably nuances to things that I would understand unless I work in it. But I look at the convenience aspect. I could listen, share, do whatever with this clip. A lot. I can get it in the hands of my global clients. If they don't have this channel to stream, they might have this channel to stream, and people are tuned in all day long. Anyway, you see a lot of the same people these conferences from just what I've gathered, like just watching LinkedIn posts. But it's like, how many people actually tune into this stuff that don't attend the conference and they're excelling in their career in the same aspect because they're just always tuned in. You know what I mean? They like this.
Yeah,
they like
there's plenty of people that I see on LinkedIn putting out tons of content that I've never once ever seen in person at a conference ever. It's like, I think MRC is like the biggest fraud and payments one specifically, with like about 1,600 people attend it. And then Money 2020 is massive, but that's completely different situation, But, 1,600 people, I get like $4,000 on each one of these episodes. Like, that's way more ears for people that like just aren't there, especially when it's like around like St. Patrick's Day, and all those sorts of things, like March Madness. Like, I don't know. That's
Hey, I hear you. Hey, we want people to sponsor the episode, and the last thing I would just add with it is like, it's the credibility. They have the opportunity to get to know you more. You have a really interesting, extensive career, and I think that speaks a lot to it. Like when you're looking for information, it usually just comes down to the source. Where are you getting your information from? Do you trust that source, you know?
Yeah. And that's where I think like, it's funny because I see like a lot of solution providers are trying to start their own podcast. Like, and just nobody wants to hear or sign up for content directly from a solution provider that's like, oh, you say you have that problem, we could solve that for you. Like it's always a sales pitch. Like that's right. Every time a content creator or not a solution provider has started creating content that's interactive, it's always leading to a sales pitch. That's all it is. And no matter what. And I think it's so funny, especially because like they take little jabs at me specifically. And I'm like, go for it, guys. Like, go ahead and have everybody sign up to play your little game and then put your shitty mic'd, shitty sounding content out that talks about how you can solve exactly the problem that you just created. And then like, it's blows my mind. But like, I will say like, I've seen like at least 3 different ones try and create it and they always fizzle out because the channel's not just there. You need like, that's where even on my contracts on there is like, I'll put your ads on there. It may or may not be what I'm going to talk about. And I may or may not have a competitor of yours on the show, but your ads will be there. And the fact of the matter is I'm just talking about something like my show's selfish. I would talk to guests that I want to talk to about topics that I want to talk about. And a lot of times those guests are at new solution providers or existing solution providers that might be adjacent to our space, but that I think are cool. Intersect is a great one. Ausignal is a great one. They're not directly in our space, but I think the product that they make, Passkeys, it's cool. It's sexy. It's sure. That interests me. It's my show. They're going to be on. Now, I have a lot of fraud providers that have been on there before those episodes. Now, granted, one of them was an orchestrator that very much could just partner with those people. And then anybody that thought my episode was cool could then call my sponsor, say, hey, I want that. How do I get that? And I'll think, so yeah.
You don't got to sell me. I get it.
Yeah. Anybody that wants, like, that has an interest, ping Ryan at fraudboxer.com. He gets set you up with some of the slots that we have available. Like we're starting to get pretty good book up through the end of the year, but there are some slots available. So, we can find something. I'm
absolutely
kicking around the idea of doing like tailored content too, like special, like social media clips and things like that. We'll see though. We'll see. I mean, that's what Ryan and I talk about that. And that's why we kind of have like what's happening in the House of Fraud. We're kind of where we're going to go with that. Right now, we're just having fun talking fraud about what everybody else is talking fraud about. So yeah. We'll see. Yeah. All right, man. Well, thanks for coming on the show. Everybody, Ryan McDonald on LinkedIn, go ahead and add him. I'll put links to him in the description of this. If you're interested in sponsoring Fraudboxer, ping him, or any of the other shows we ever talk about. We're probably going to use him too for that. So, hey, buy him a drink when you see him at the next conference too, he goes there on his own dime sometimes. So yeah.
Hey, awesome. Thanks, Jordan. I appreciate it. Great to be here.
Well, thanks. Yeah, thanks for coming, and we'll talk soon. See everybody in a couple of weeks. Thanks again for listening to today's episode. Please don't forget to visit our sponsor, The House of Fraud, at www.thehouseoffraud.com to learn how to get your very own membership to get in the club. Don't forget to also subscribe to our brand new original series, This Week in the House of Fraud, available on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, and pretty much anywhere else you listen to podcasts. Thanks again for listening. I'll see you next week.